In this video, we're going to be covering how to fill out your CA1 form, or as it says here, Federal Employees Notice of Traumatic Injury and Claim for Continuation of Pay/Compensation. This form is actually not too hard to fill out. Not a lot of people have problems filling this out. There's nothing really tricky on here, so let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll get right to it. Employee data. This is the easiest portion of the form to fill out because it's everything you already know. Your name would go here. It does ask for your last name first, so your last name would go first, then your first name, then middle initial. Over here, you put your social security number in, which is also very easy. Date of birth, gender, check off male or female. Home phone. One question that people ask me frequently is, I don't have a home phone, what would I put here? Well, just go ahead and use the number that they'll most likely be able to contact you on very easily. In other words, a cell phone is fine. In box 6, grade of pay as date of injury. If you know your level and step, go ahead and put that in there. It's not 100% necessary to get your claim filed right now. If you know it, definitely put it in. If not, you'll be asked for it later on. It's not necessary at this very moment. Employee's home mailing address. Go ahead and fill that here in box 7. Now, I do want to state it is very important to make sure that you write everything as clearly and legibly as possible, because if they misinterpret what you wrote, for instance, if you write 14 Main Street, but what they see is 19 Main Street, all correspondence from OWCP to you will be going to the wrong address. If you have messy handwriting like I do, have somebody else fill it out for you. Not a problem. In box 8, fill out any dependents that you may have. In box 9, this is where some people do have some problem. Box 9 asks place where injury occurred. In box 9, sometimes what people will put in here is the body part that was injured, right elbow. This is incorrect. You'd put that in box 14. This is asking for the address of where you got hurt, which brings me up to this point. When you get hurt somewhere, especially with the CA1 injury, what you're going to want to do is be able to document as much of that as possible. What I mean is, if you slipped and fell, take a picture of where you slipped and fell. If you were coming down some steps and you missed the last one and hurt your ankle, take a picture of that. If you tripped on something, take a picture of what you tripped on. The more documentation you have, the better. In box 10, you're going to put the date the injury occurred. So just as an example, we'll go ahead and put January 1st, 2018. Time, be specific as possible. If it was 10:23 a.m., put that. If you don't know the exact time, get as close as possible. Date of this notice. A little bit of confusion here sometimes. It's quite literally the day that you filled this notice in. So if it happens to be the same date as you got injured, then box 10 and box 11 would be the same. If you got injured, as the example we see here, January 1st, and then submitted this notice on January 3rd, then you'd go ahead and put January 3rd in box 11. So just to clarify the difference between box 10 and box 11, box 10 is the date the injury happened, the date the injury occurred. Box 11 is asking for the date that you turned this notice in. Moving to box 12, employee's occupation. Go ahead and put your job title in there. That's pretty easy. In box 13, as you can see, there's not a lot of space here. What box 13 is asking for is the cause of the injury. Describe what happened and why. In here, you would put a brief description of what you were doing when the accident happened. So, for instance, I was delivering mail to 123 Main Street. As I was coming down the steps, I slipped and caused me to fall down the remaining steps. Something that we see frequently. You don't need an extremely long explanation of what happened. You need to be precise and get directly to what caused the injury. Moving along to box 14, nature of injury. Identify both the injury and the part of the body. So, for instance, what you would put here is sprained ankle, injured shoulder, sprained back. If you've been to a doctor prior to submitting this form, what you will put in box 14 is the specific diagnosis that they gave you. If you haven't, you will just put the injured body area. Now, the reason why you would do that is because if the doctor has given you a firm diagnosis, he's going to put that in his report and submit that to OWCP, and that will match. If you haven't been to the doctor yet, you don't know 100% what's wrong with you. So if you put something specific on this form and you don't have a firm diagnosis yet, OWCP is going to be wondering how it is that you determined what the injury was, and now the doctor has decided it was something else. So if you have not gone to the doctors yet, and I would say about 95% of you will be filling this form out prior to seeing your medical doctor. Since that is most likely the case What you will put in here is something very simple. Left ankle sprain, or I hurt my back, I injured my shoulder. Because at this point, you haven't seen your doctor yet and you don't have a firm diagnosis. So you need to put something general. Once your doctor goes ahead and gets a firm diagnosis on his narrative report, he'll put the firm diagnosis code and submit that to OWCP. If you don't have that, just put something general in this box, as I showed you here with these examples. This box here, as it says, is for OWCP use. Don't fill anything in here. They'll take care of that on their end. Now, in this employee signature section, go ahead and read this and then select which type of pay you would like to use prior to receiving workers' compensation pay once your case is accepted. Now, looking at the two options that are available to you, continuation of regular pay not to exceed 45 days and compensation for wage loss if disability for work continues beyond 45 days. If my claim is denied, I understand that the continuation of my regular pay shall be charged to sick or annual or deemed an overpayment within the meaning of the law. Most people just decide to go ahead and use continuation of regular pay and not fool around with leave buyback forms later on. Now, after the 45-day period is over, if your claim is still not accepted at that point, then you will have to use sick or annual leave. I can't tell you what to use here, but you do have to select between one of these two. Once you've made your decision, read this paragraph here and sign your form. Witness statement. Most folks have someone who has witnessed their injury. Most times that happens. Someone witnesses the injury. Someone likely saw you get injured. 99 times out of 100, this is left blank. Why? Why not have this filled in? You know, I travel around the country and I've spoken to a bunch of different unions, and what they call each other there is brother and sister. If that's the case, why wouldn't your brother or sister sign as a witness for you? It's not going to cost them anything. They're quite literally just saying, I saw what happened, and that's it. The absolute worst thing that can happen is that they're required to write a paragraph or two stating what they saw. The flip side to that is having a witness strengthens your case. Why not ask them to go ahead and be a witness for you? This is not a scenario where they're going to be on the stand testifying in court. They're just quite literally stating, I saw John Doe slip and fall. I saw John Doe pick that up and hurt his back. That's it. It strengthens your case, and there's no real cost to doing it. Technically speaking, that's all you need to do to fill in this form. However, if you've got a couple extra minutes, I want to talk to you about a couple things that are very important for your claim. Let's go ahead and focus in right here. What you see is that it says, have your supervisor complete this receipt, attach this form, and return it to you for your records. Most times when people get a CA1 form, they'll be given the first page, possibly even page 2, which at the top here says supervisor's report. Page 2 is to be filled out by your supervisor. You've got nothing to do there. If you do get page 2, what you usually will not get is page 3 or page 4, which is really unfortunate because at the bottom of page 4, right here, receipt of notice of injury. This is your right to have this. It's very, very easy. This is very, very easy for management to fill in. The reason you want to have this portion filled in and given back to you is because management has 10 days from the date of receipt of this form, and that is 10 business days, so 2 full weeks, let's say, to get this over to the Injury Compensation Department for the processing of your claim. If you don't have this receipt filled out, what you will find is that if they don't get it in within the required 10 business days, the blame is on you. And OWCP does not care whether or not you passed it in on time, and the burden of proof is on you. Why does that make a difference? Why does that make a difference? The reason it makes a difference, and we're going to cut right up to page 1, if you look here and you decide to select continuation of regular pay, COP, there's a time requirement. It's 30 days. If you get hurt on January 1st and give them this form, and you've selected continuation of regular pay, but No one received it until January 31st. You do not qualify for COP. In fact, there's a good amount of confusion when it comes to COP and filing. The law states that you have 3 years for either a CA1 or a CA2 from the date of injury to file. You have 30 days with a CA1 from the date of injury to qualify for continuation of regular pay. So if you want continuation of pay, you need to submit this form within 30 days of the date of injury. So why is that receipt important? Not only is it your right to have it, not only were you instructed on the form to get it, but if this CA1 form gets lost in the shuffle, if it gets slid under some papers and not submitted on time, and now you're 30 days out, and now you have no other recourse aside from your word, and that is your word against theirs, stating that you passed this form in on time. As you can see here, we cut back to the receipt. Another reason, aside from it's your right to have this receipt, that you'll want to make sure that you have it, is because management has lost the CA1 form, and when they lose the form, they cannot submit it. The only proof that it was submitted at that time is this receipt. If you don't have it, you've submitted nothing, and the only person to blame, because the burden of proof is on you, is you. You won't be able to blame your supervisor, manager. You won't be able to blame anyone else because you didn't have this receipt. OWCP simply won't believe you. So let's say you have this receipt and they lose it anyway. What would prevent you from going back and having to refill out this entire form? Make copies ahead of time. One thing that you should do is make copies of all your forms and keep them in a file chronologically. The reason for that is that if they lose something, you can go back, copy it, resubmit it. If you come to our facility, every CA17, CA20, any document that we produce for you, we will give you 2 copies, one to put in your file and one to give to management or injury comp. Should they lose the copy that we made for them, now you have a copy ready to go, which can be copied again and given to management, and you keep the original copy in your folder for your records, or in case they lose the document yet again. Like I said earlier, you completed filling out this form, but if you have yet just another couple minutes, I want to explain 2 things that you've probably never seen before. One is this form right here, what a federal employee should do when injured at work. This is commonly referred to as the CA10 form, as seen in the bottom right-hand corner here. As you can see here, it says post on employee's bulletin board. Usually when I'm in a meeting, I ask by show of hands, how many of you have ever seen this form before? If I'm lucky, I'll get one person to raise their hand. This form is usually posted nowhere in the facility. Why is this form important? Because there's a little known right when it comes to CA1 injuries that you have. And that right is right here. Before you obtain medical care, ask your supervisor to authorize medical treatment by use of Form Ca-16. What is Form Ca-16? Form Ca-16 is officially called Authorization for Examination and/or Treatment. So why do you want this? Let's not conjecture about it. Let's see what the form says about itself. As we can see here in this paragraph, what it clearly states is a federal employee injured by accident while in the performance of duty has the initial right to select a physician of his or her choice to provide necessary treatment. The supervisor shall immediately authorize examination and appropriate medical care by use of Form Ca-16 to either the United States medical officer or hospital or duly qualified physician hospital of the employee's choice. So not only do you have the right to choose your own physician, you do not have to go to who they demand you to go to. Your initial choice can be made by you. You're welcome to go anywhere you want, and you can bring this form along. What does the Ca-16 do? That we're going to find out in this section here. Now, this is to the doctor. That's when the top here it says information for physician. Please read Part A of Form Ca-16. You are authorized to examine and provide treatment for the injury or disease described in Item 5 for a period not more than 60 days from the date of issuance, subject to the conditions in Item 6. Forget about that for a second. We're getting to the good stuff. Let's drop down to this paragraph, and we see that this form covers office visits and consultations, lab work, hospital service, including inpatient, X-rays, MRIs, CAT scans, physical therapy, emergency services, including surgery, and chiropractic services. What this form basically allows you to do is get all the therapy and medical treatment that you require within the first 60 days of your date of injury or date of issuance. And by the way, you need to ask for this form within 7 days of the date of injury, otherwise you have zero right to have it. And when you request it, the law states that they have 4 hours to give it to you. If they don't, file a grievance. If you don't get a receipt, file a grievance. This form is going to make sure that you don't have to come out of pocket for any of the services that you need because of your work-related injury. If you don't have it, you'll be required to pay co-pays and file under your personal insurance until your case is accepted. Unfortunately, but fortunately for you, that's not what the law states. The law states that you're covered by Form Ca-16. It's your absolute right to have it. What's the problem with Form Ca-16? Nobody knows about it. That's the problem. If your supervisor is unaware that there's such a thing as Form Ca-16, well, truth be told, that's not your problem. That's theirs. Tell them that you would like to have it. It's your right to have it. And for them to ask whoever they report to get them one. Have them call the injury comp department at Human Resources. They definitely know what this is. And by the way, something that I've heard frequently is this statement here. They said you couldn't have one. Your next question is, who is they? Who said I couldn't have one? If you have a legitimate CA1 injury, it's your right to have this form. And if, quote unquote, they said you can't have it, they're not operating within the boundaries of the law. If they are from your agency and not OWCP, then a grievance needs to be filed. Now, because management is often not trained on the use of this form, they probably won't have one. However, the injury comp department at Human Resources, they have it, and they can send it over to your facility via fax, email, or whatever means necessary to get it to you within 4 hours. Let's go back to the top. There's actually nothing for you to fill out on this form, zero. Your supervisor will go ahead and fill this entire thing in. One of the reasons why this form is so protected is because it's essentially a blank check. You can bring this to any medical provider, physical therapy provider. They can do all the therapy that they feel that you need from 60 days from the issuance of this. And remember what I said, you need to request this within 7 days of your date of injury to have a right to it. And once you've requested it, I personally would write down the time because they have 4 hours to deliver this to you filled out. Periodically, there's some question as to whether or not the employee actually deserves to have this form. And if that's the case, they still have to give it to you, but they have to make the selection here. Box 2. There is doubt whether the employee's condition is caused by an injury sustained in the performance of duty. If they believe that, then go ahead and just tell them you need to go ahead and check box 2. Otherwise, check box 1. OWCP is the only authority authorized to make the final decision on whether or not authorization and payment for treatment will be made through the use of this form. Now that I finished telling you about your right to have the Ca-16, we have completed this video. I hope you found it useful and helpful and educational. I truly hope everything goes well for your case. Thank you for watching, and make it a great day.